Good afternoon. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Business Inspections Housing and Zoning Committee for today, April 18th. I am joined by a quorum of the committee that includes council members Chugtai, Osman, Rainville, and Chavez, which is a quorum of the committee, as well as, at the moment, Councilmember Payne. Other council members who come, I will introduce when the moment allows. We have a lengthy agenda today. So we will first take up the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of item 8, which is the liquor license approvals, and item number 9, the liquor license renewals. Item 10 are the gambling license approvals. Item number 11 is a license settlement conference with recommendations and business license operating conditions for the Gay 90s at 400 Hennepin Avenue. Item 12 is an extension of exclusive development rights with Sherman and Associates for a property at 1500 4th Street South. Item number 13 are allocating funding through our BTAB program, Business Technical Assistance Program, for over a dozen small community organizations working in partnership with the city and businesses. Item number 14 is our home CDBG and NSP program income appropriation. And item number 15 is the Livable Communities Account Award for the City of Lakes Community Land Trust. Item number 16 is the deed redevelopment grants. These are accepting grants that have been applied for by a number of affordable housing and economic development programs. Item number 17 are the winning awards for the spring 2023 Brownfields round through the county. And item number 18 is approval of Hennepin County's Redevelopment Authority doing a bond issuance at Whittier Community Housing, which is at 2609 Blaisdell Avenue South. Item 19 is Oakland Square. This is approving Hennepin County to also put bond issuance into that project. Item number 20 is revising program guidelines for our NOAA Preservation Fund. Item 21 is a rezoning at 11 8th Avenue Northeast and 800 Sibley Street Northeast. Item number 12 is a referral to staff as it pertains to our mold ordinance. Item number 23 is setting a public hearing for May 2nd for Plymouth Avenue Apartments Tax Increment Housing Plan. And item number 4 is setting a public hearing for May 2nd to consider a housing revenue bonds for Northrop King in the First Ward. With that, I am going to move items, the entire consent agenda, which is items 8 through 24. I'll note the committee has been joined by Councilmember Ellison, who should be recorded as present. And I will see if there's any item anyone would like to pull from the consent agenda. Councilmember Rainville.
Madam Chair, I do not want to pull anything, but I would like to speak briefly to item number 21.
Please do so now.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if there's anyone from the park board here, but this item is about Graco Park. They've done a great job. It's a very complex issue. The neighborhood has been very patient, as has park board staff. And I want to just thank the park staff for their great work on doing this. Parkland along the river is very desired and valuable, and we're all very excited. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Other comments or questions on the consent agenda from members of the committee? Seeing none, on the chair's motion to approve, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those items are approved. We will now move to our public hearing agenda. There are 5 public hearings in addition to 2 quasi-judicial public hearings. I believe the total time we'll need to do these is about 60 to 90 minutes. Once we've concluded with that, we will take up the discussion item of the forgivable loan for the Indigenous Peoples Task Force project, and then move into item number 26, which is the staff presentation on the rent stabilization economic analysis. We have set 90 minutes for item number 26, which is the staff analysis. There'll be a presentation from staff, as well as the opportunity for members of the committee, followed by other members of the council, to ask questions of staff. Should we need more time, I am absolutely open to taking it up again at the next meeting, as well as offering the opportunity to submit written questions from members of the council to staff that could be addressed in the next committee meeting. But there's going to be a hard stop on the meeting today at 4:25 to accommodate the Heritage Preservation Commission that meets at 4:30, as well as the 90-minute timeline we set so that everyone could plan their schedules accordingly. So if we run out of time, and I'm going to work very hard to make sure we don't, we can take it up at the next meeting, and it will be at the will of the committee. So if someone is interested in putting it on the next agenda, I'm perfectly happy to do that. With that, we'll start with public hearing number 1, which is Nolo's Kitchen, and we'll hear from Mr. Cervantes on item number 1.
Thank you, Chair Goodman and committee members. I am Licensed Inspector Max Cervantes, Licenses and Consumer Services. I'm presenting an application from Nolo's Kitchen and Bar, the basement bar owned by the Maytag Project LLC. The business address is 511 Washington Avenue North, located in Ward 3. The current license is an on-sale liquor general entertainment Sunday sales license. The applicant is requesting a permanent expansion of premises to include the rooftop of their building. Nolo's Kitchen and Bar, the basement bar, has been operating at this location since 2017. Their proposed hours of operation for this space are 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sunday through Wednesday, and 11 a.m. to 12 a.m. Thursday through Saturday. The expansion will provide 85 seats for food and beverage service on the rooftop. On March 28th, public hearing notices were sent to property owners within 450 feet of the premises. Notices were also sent to the North Loop Neighborhood Association, the Warehouse District Business Association, and Councilmember Rainville. We have received 3 comments from the community with concerns about noise. This business has used the space in this manner with a temporary permit over the last 3 years, and no 311s have been generated for noise. On the rooftop, there would be background music at ambient levels. There would be 3 speakers placed on the floor with the roof, sidewalls, bathroom structure, and bar structure to act as noise barriers. The volume of the speakers will be controlled by the manager on duty. The Licenses and Consumer Services Division recommends approval of a permanent expansion of premises for Nolo's Kitchen and Bar, the basement bar. This concludes my presentation at this time. I will stand for any comments or questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cervantes. Are there any comments or questions for staff on this application? Seeing none, thank you. We will open the public hearing on item number 1 and see if there's anyone here to speak to this issue. If you are, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Please feel free to make any statement you'd like.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you, Madam Goodman. My name is Brett Johnson. I'm here with my partners, Marty Collins and Peter Hoff. Thank you, Max, for that presentation. I think we just wanted to introduce ourselves, be available for any questions. We've been in the neighborhood 5 years now. We're extremely grateful to be there. We feel like the building and the businesses inside have been a great asset to the community. We're super proud of our staff and the culture that it's brought. Again, being open breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We're super excited for the expansion on the rooftop. I think it's a great asset to the neighborhood. If the snow ever melts and we finally get to eat and drink outside. But we'll be available for any questions. And I know there's a lot on the agenda, so I don't want to eat up much time, but I think Max covered kind of the main details, but we'll be available to address any questions. I think Marty has a couple comments as well.
Sure, Mr. Collins, welcome.
Martin Collins. Just want to harken back to the original idea here of being a neighborhood place for people to gather. You know, we are that. A lot of people like to gather at our place. They have a wonderful time. We pride ourselves on hospitality and being here for the community. We stayed open during COVID. We have a breakfast spot when everyone else is closing. So we're here for the community as a gathering space. We'd like to continue that on a beautiful rooftop in the North Loop. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Would you like to speak also?
No, I think these guys.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see if there's anyone else here to speak to this issue. Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Collins, for coming today. We spoke the other day, and thank you as well, Mr. Johnson. And is it Peter or Pete?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thank you for coming. But I have spoken with Mr. Collins. I want the committee to know that I'm going to vote to postpone this motion, to postpone this for one cycle, so they have the chance to talk to the neighbor group. There's been some miscommunications on both sides, but to talk to them as well as to speak with our police department to upgrade your security plan. It's been in existence for 5 years. Things have changed, especially with the rooftop deck. So let's get those 2 items taken care of. Ms. Lingo is in the crowd. She'll help you. She's in the audience here. She'll help you make contact with the police department for the security plan upgrade. And with that, I'll motion to postpone this one cycle.
Item number 1 has been moved for postponement one cycle. Further comments or questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved. I would like to ask the clerk, the public hearing is closed now, correct? So the next time we bring this up, it's a vote. They don't need to
Yes.
come, they don't have to present.
Chair Goodman, that is correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure you know you didn't need to come back. Great, thank you for being here today. We'll move on to item number 2, Underground Leaf and Vine. Mr. Cervantes, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Goodman and committee members. I am Licensed Inspector Max Cervantes, Licenses and Consumer Services. I'm presenting an application from Underground Leaf and Vine, owned by Underground Wine Club, LLC. The business address is 702.5 First Street North, located in Ward 3. The applicant is requesting an off-sale liquor license. This is a new business in the Itasca building. Their proposed hours of operation are Tuesday through Saturday, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., Sunday, 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. On March 28th, public hearing notices were sent to property owners within 450 feet of the premises. Notices were also sent to the North Loop Neighborhood Association, the Warehouse District Business Association, and Councilmember Rainville. We have received no comments from the community. The Licenses and Consumer Services Division recommends approval of an off-sale liquor license for Underground Leaf and Vine. This concludes my presentation. At this time, I will stand for any comments or questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Cervantes? Seeing none, thank you for your report. We'll open the public hearing on item number 2, which is a off-sale liquor license for Underground Leaf and Vine. You must be Mr. Vogel or Mr. Morse.
I am Mr. Vogel, so thank you for having me today.
Welcome.
I know you got a lot on the agenda, so I'll try to be brief. My wife and I are new residents to the Minneapolis area from San Diego. Been here since November. My previous life, Country Club GM, probably not a great job here since you're only open 6 months a year, but during COVID, when we had to shut down for 3 to 6 months for a restaurant, all my friends that sold wine worked on commission, pretty much not making any money. So I asked them, just send me a list of like 50 wines by the case. I'll send it out to our membership, see if we can't get you, a little money on the table. Sure enough, last year we did $500,000 on just, 385 members. So moving here, a chance to start anew, wanted to own my own business and bring that same business model here to Minneapolis.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Can I say one more thing? I worked a lot with the city in San Diego. They were great people, but I got to say the people we have working here have been amazing. So I just want that to be on the public record that working with the city and all the staff has been great.
Thank you for saying that. Ms. Lingo, Mr. Cervantes, and your entire team, you continue to do an amazing job. We're very proud of you, and to hear this is just wonderful, so thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Any questions?
No questions, public hearing. Is Andrew Morse here? Yes. Mr. Morse, welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Morse. I live in the North Loop, and I wanted to say a few words of support for Jason's business. I met him a few months ago. I think he's a smart and solid operator. I feel good about the business model he wants to bring to the building. My perspective is this. I've lived personally in the Itasca for 5 years, but my mother bought the place in 1994. So the Itasca has been my family's home for 3 decades. I'm actually the 5th generation of Morse living and working in the North Loop. So happy to say that. We need more retail in North Loop. His business model would be perfect for that building. And I also wanted to speak on behalf of the other residents, including those like me who choose to live a car-free lifestyle, who think it would be wonderful to have access to high-quality beer and wine without having to drive to it. So strong support, not just from me, but I think as a consensus from the other residents of the Itasca building in the North Loop. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today, sir. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone else? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to move approval of this. But first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Vogel, for coming down. You've done a great job of public outreach, and the input from the community has been very positive. Mr. Morse, thank you for coming. But Mr. Vogel, your kind words for our staff are very much appreciated. They work very hard. They're good people, and they make this city work. So thank you for recognizing that and publicly calling them out. And I, again, want to thank the staff as well. So thank you for your good work. With that, I move approval.
Approval has been moved of item number 2. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll move on to item number 3. Mr. Olson, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Goodman and committee members. I'm Joe Olson, Inspector with Business License and Consumer Services. Today, I'm presenting an application from Albee Kitchen, owned by Fardosa Unique Corporation. The business is located at 1411 Nicollet Avenue in Ward 7. The applicant is requesting extended hours license and a sidewalk cafe license. The proposed hours of operation for the restaurant will be Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. to 4 a.m., and Saturday and Sunday from 9 a.m. to 4 a.m. on the interior. The exterior will be Monday through Friday, 3 to 11, and Saturday and Sunday from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. Notices were sent to property owners within 600 feet of the premises. Notices were also sent to the Loring Park Business Association, Citizens for a Loring Park Community, as well as Council Member Lisa Goodman. We have not received any feedback from the community. There have been no complaints, 311 calls, or police calls associated with this business. There are no operating conditions or other issues. The License and Consumer Services Division recommends approval of an extended hours and a sidewalk cafe license. This concludes my presentation. At this time, I will stand for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Olson on this item? Seeing none, thank you so much for your report. We'll open the public hearing on item number 3. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Council Member Osman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to move this item, and I want to add, this location is located in Ward 7, and this is one location that's, I really see it growing. It's new buildings, new restaurants, and new businesses opening. So congratulations for those, and I'm happy to move this item.
Item number 3 has been moved for approval. Further comments and questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll move on to item number 4. Andra, welcome.
Thank you. Chair Goodman, council members, I'm Andra Bosniak, the Policy Data and Communications Manager in Regulatory Services, and I'm here before you today to talk about the skateboard ramp ordinance update. Currently, all skateboard ramps are prohibited in residentially zoned areas in Minneapolis. After a request to review this ordinance, staff from multiple departments agree that a limited exception would result in an approach more consistent with modern-day treatment of this and other recreational sports equipment. The update before you would allow exceptions of skateboard ramps in residentially zoned areas as long as they are non-permanent, movable, and don't exceed 4 feet in height. This update would still require constituents to comply with all applicable ordinances, such as the required yard setbacks, as well as noise levels and hours. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Are there any questions for staff on this item? Seeing none, thank you for your report. We'll open the public hearing on item number 4 with regard to not prohibiting skateboard ramps or structures, but actually allowing them on a temporary basis. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Corey Bracken. I'm owner of Pillar Skateboards and Pillar Forum Cafe. I started skateboarding when I was 6 years old and always had ramps in my yard. One of the favorite pictures of myself is going off a jump in my front yard. And my business is in Ward 1, and just knowing other community members that live in that area, skateboarders. And I know the state's trying to do a lot of things for skateboarding, but to be able to have that access right in your backyard, right in your front yard, and not be illegal, I think would be a good thing for the community and for the residents of Minneapolis. That's all I have.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Chair Goodman. It has been a pleasure to work together with Andra, so thank you so much for the presentation. Reg Services, CPED, the City Attorney's Office, Councilmember Payne on this ordinance. We greatly appreciate the creativity and the responsiveness that you have given and thought into this ordinance. Originally, a Ward 9 resident did reach out about them wanting to build a non-permanent skateboard ramp in their backyard, and Andra quickly responded to my office and saying, let's find a solution to this, and that was just something that deeply meant a lot to me and Councilmember Payne on finding these solutions together. I think it shows like, while this may be a small issue, it shows like how responsive we can be as a city when we want to find creative solutions to the situations our constituents are dealing with on a daily basis. So just wanted to show my appreciation to our staff on this work. And I think one important thing is that I just want to see more youth get involved in a safe manner, and I think this can help improve, like, you know, the things that they can do in their backyard. So just want to show my great appreciation and thanks.
Further comments or questions? Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to thank my colleagues for bringing this forward, and I want to thank staff for working on this. I know that the example I'm about to talk about is a permanent structure, but in my ward, when Juxtaposition didn't have enough capital to build their new facility yet, they turned one of their sites into a skateboard park, a small skateboard park on the corner of Emerson and West Broadway. And it's been so popular and it's been so sort of transformational for that corner that they decided to build their building on the lot next door and keep the permanent park, which they initially had planned to demolish when they were ready to build their permanent building. And so, you know, couldn't agree with our speaker anymore, and really thankful to staff. I think this could be, it's a small step, but it's something that can be really transformative for a corner, transformative for youth especially, but not only youth. So, you know, a lot of elder skateboarders out there. So, thank you.
How do you define elder skateboarder? Like my age? On Councilmember Chavez's motion to approve, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We will now move on to item number 5, which is Allina Health Systems bond issuance at 800 East 28th. Ms. Shaw, welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Becky Shaw with the CPED Business Development Department. And you have before you a request to authorize the issuance of up to $400 million in tax-exempt revenue bonds for Allina Health System. The bond proceeds will be used to finance the construction of a surgical and critical care pavilion, related infrastructure and renovations as part of the Abbott Northwestern Hospital Campus Revitalization Project located at 800 East 28th Street. Allina Health Services has made use of city revenue bonds many times over the years. In 2021, the city issued $200 million in tax-exempt revenue bonds for the first phase of the Campus Revitalization Project, which was the construction of a central utility plant and parking ramp, bike center, and other improvements to support the current project phase. The existing hospital was constructed in the mid-1900s with surgical rooms that are now too small to accommodate modern surgical equipment. So constructing the new surgical and care pavilion will greatly improve the types of surgeries Abbott Northwestern can provide and the number of patients that they can serve. The 9-story, 575,000 square foot facility will contain 30 operating rooms with associated prep and recovery space, 192 inpatient beds, a lobby, cafe, amenities for staff and visitors, and a floor for future build-out. Allina is requesting $400 million in revenue bonds to finance the construction of the new facility. With these types of bonds, the funds come from bondholders purchasing the bonds and are repaid with revenues by the project. So none of the project costs or repayments will come from the city. And I do have representatives here from Allina, and at this time, I will stand for any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for Ms. Shaw on item number 5? Seeing none, thank you for your report. We'll open the public hearing on item number 5, which is the issuance of $400 million in tax-exempt revenue bonds to Allina Health Systems. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Representatives from Allina are here. Does anyone have any questions for representatives from Allina? They're willing to pass in order to allow us to move forward. I'll just see if there are any questions from the committee. Seeing no questions from the committee, I'll ask one last time if there's anyone else here who would like to testify on this issue. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and move approval of the staff recommendation. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. We will now move on to our quasi-judicial public hearings. This is kind of a different setup than the last set of public hearings. We will hear a staff report followed by a 10-minute presentation from the appellant, and then we will open the public hearing and each additional person who is here to speak can speak for 2 minutes. I would urge the appellants to take all of your people in your 10 minutes. The public hearing really should be for the public hearing portion of it, so given we have a lengthy agenda, that would be ideal today. And we'll start with item number 6, which is a variance appeal at 2023 40th Street East. Mr. Kohlhaas, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Goodman, members of the committee. Before you today is an appeal of a decision of the Zoning Board of Adjustment denying a variance request to increase maximum fence height in a required reverse corner front yard accessory to the single-family dwelling at 223 40th Street East. This property is in the R1A multiple family district in the Interior 1 built form overlay district. It has a lot area of 6,072 square feet. The appellant is Chris Ruiz, who's the resident of the property and was the applicant for the variance. This is part of a slightly bigger project, so just give a little bit of background on the property and other things that are happening at the same time. This is an overhead photo from back in 2018 showing the previous conditions. You can see the property is a reverse corner lot, and the north side, so the top of your screen, is that reverse corner front, which is regulated as a front yard for zoning purposes. That's the same direction that the house is oriented, and you can see other site improvements like a detached garage in the southwest corner, driveway, deck, walkways around the property. In the northwest corner, that's a shed that used to be located there. This is a photo from 2019 showing those same conditions, and this is again looking at that north side. So you can see there is a short retaining wall right along the public sidewalk and a previous fence a bit further up the slope there. That retaining wall and the fence you see in this photo are in the public right-of-way. Right behind that fence is a metal shed that was in the northwest corner of the property. That shed has since been removed from the property. So here you can see a similar view from last fall showing some new improvements which have been made on the property, including increasing the height of that retaining wall above previous conditions and raising the grade behind it to match. A new 6-foot privacy fence installed along the top of the retaining wall, and turning the corner and running alongside, that's the neighbor's driveway on the right-hand side of the screen there. This is a survey again showing the current conditions. So after these improvements have been made, also just again highlight towards the northwest corner where that shed used to be. That shed has been removed, and now there is a brick paver patio and some new walkways connecting that patio to the front entrance to the house, as well as to the garage and parking area to the south. This required a variance to increase the maximum height of a fence from 3 feet to 6 feet in a required reverse corner front yard. There were some other variance requests that were included as part of the overall application that went to the board. The subject of today's appeal is specifically the fence height variance and not the other variances that were required related to the retaining wall or the patio or the impervious surface coverage overall. I'm happy to talk about those other components if anyone on the committee is interested, but in the interest of time, I'll focus on the fence height variance, which was denied on the board, and that's specifically the subject of this appeal. As the members of the committee are aware, there are 3 required variance findings that need to be considered. In this case, I'll go through the individual analysis from staff's perspective for each of these, but ultimately the staff recommendation was for denial, and that staff recommendation analysis was the basis for the board's decision denying this variance request. So the first required finding regarding practical difficulties due to circumstances unique to the property, staff finds this is met. This is a reverse corner property which has more strict setback requirements and therefore more strict fence height requirements. And if hypothetically, if this were a standard corner side for zoning purposes on the north side of the property, a 6-foot privacy fence would be allowed in the same location without the need for a variance. And this reverse corner nature goes back to the platting and development of this property and the neighboring properties, which I think it's from around 1911 in this case. So staff finds that finding is met. The second required finding regarding reasonable use and spirit and intent of the ordinance and the comprehensive plan, staff finds that this is not met. The intent of the ordinance generally regarding maximum fence heights is to encourage an aesthetic environment, to allow for privacy while maintaining access to light and air, and to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. In front yards, fence height requirements are more strict to ensure the most visibility to and from public-facing sides of properties. And the code is also structured to limit visual obstructions within what we call a sight triangle, the angle or the area near, technically it's street or alley intersections is the way the code applies, but in this case we're talking about public street, public sidewalk, and a private driveway. So a similar consideration is made in terms of the spirit and intent of the ordinance. So as constructed in this case, the retaining wall plus the fence are a total of 9 feet in height approximately. This is immediately adjacent to the public sidewalk and the neighbor's driveway, so it's a large visual obstruction that creates some potential or increases some potential for conflicts between vehicles and pedestrians in the area. And this new fence is on the reverse corner side. It's the same side as the architectural front of the house, so it's the area that's intended to have the most visibility, so staff finds it doesn't meet the spirit and intent of the ordinance in that regard. For the third required finding regarding essential character of the locality and potential for injury or detriment, staff also finds this is not met. Staff finds this would not alter the essential character of the locality, but as I mentioned a minute ago, it does create some potential for injury or detriment due to the visibility around that neighbor's driveway and the sidewalk. I would note if the committee is inclined to grant this appeal or any sort of in lieu of appeal, staff would recommend a condition that they receive approval of an encroachment permit through Public Works for portions of this which are in the right-of-way. I think there are a total of 3 written public comments which were received for this item, all of which should have been made available to you. The appellant is in attendance during today's hearing. This concludes my presentation, but I'll stand for questions.
Are there any questions for staff on item number 6? Councilmember Chugtai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just really quick, is this retaining wall and then the fence on top of it? I can't tell if it's just visually from the prior to putting this in versus now, if it looks like it's encroaching on the driveway, or if it actually is further into the driveway for the adjacent property.
Yeah, so here showing the survey there, I think the property line between these two neighbors is on the outside of the fence and retaining wall, right. is my understanding.
Excellent. And then on the property next door, the blue kind of house that we can see or structure that we can see there, is that a driveway or sorry, is that a garage or like their actual home?
On the very far right side of the photo, I believe that's the house itself.
Got it. So this driveway is actually used as like the place where whoever lives in that property parks their vehicle.
I can't say whether they're parking there all the time. I believe there may be a garage or a more expansive parking space in the back, but this is the driveway that's used to for any vehicle parking for that neighboring property. There's no alley access to either of these properties, as far as I understand it.
Got it. And so your concern is when there's a vehicle exiting from this driveway because of that height, they can't see a pedestrian coming down the sidewalk.
Correct. Whether someone is pulling forward or backing up in or out of this driveway, it's a substantial visual obstruction. The retaining wall plus the fence that could make it difficult to see around that corner. Hard to know if someone is walking or rolling or riding a bicycle, and could create some potential for conflict.
Understood. Thank you.
Additional questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you for your report. We are now going to open the public hearing on item number 6 and ask the appellant, Mr. Ruiz, if he would like to come forward. I would urge you to stick to the main characteristics in the staff report, as well as the opinion of the Board of Adjustment with regard to essential character and reasonable use, sir. And you have 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not going to need 10 minutes. I do have some pictures I was going to pull up.
Sure.
Just to help me.
Brad, can someone help?
I'm good.
I don't know how to use it either, so.
No, I'm all right. You need me to help you? I left them on here, so I think I'll be all right. Okay, well, first off, I just want to say when I started this project, the purpose of it, I looked into it, and there's no permit that I need to build a fence. I can build a 6-foot fence, right? So I mean, that wasn't, the whole purpose of it was to have a location where I can relax. I have some dogs that have gotten out of my yard. So it turned out to be a lot more stressful than relaxing, right? But the city itself, the whole city of Minneapolis is not accessible, and I'm sure it's not the first time any of you have heard of how difficult it is for any wheelchair user to get around the city. So my backyard was the same way. So we started doing these projects just to have somewhere to go outside. And with that, these issues happened, right? And I understand the issues, the safety issues, the potential safety concerns that this defense brings up as it is, right? So I did have proposals that I gave to Alex here. I'm not sure if the committee has those or.
No, we're not negotiating with you. This is your proposal in front of you. It's an up or down vote.
Okay.
So we're not going to negotiate a plan with you right now. That was your time to do that with staff, and you didn't come to an agreement.
Well, actually, I never had an opportunity to negotiate. The last proposals that I did provide, I did give to Mr. Alex here, but aside from that, we never negotiated any or had an opportunity to negotiate. Okay, and you can speak to that because his words after our last hearing were that he wasn't aware that I was open to negotiations. So with my last proposal, it was pushing that fence 12 feet back from where it is. And I'm sure other pictures coming up. I did.
We'll help.
Okay, sorry. Photos, always. There we go. Okay. So yeah, so this is what it looks like at the moment. This is what it originally looked like, and the fence that was there. You can see. That's about, I don't know, I'm not measuring it, but I think I counted about like 8 feet, 9 feet from the sidewalk. So I mean, my proposal is just putting that fence that I already have 12 feet back to where that is and just having it 6 feet. I mean, the obstructions, the views from the driveway were already obstructed by what was there before. I've lived on that block for about 30 years. There's never been an accident ever coming out of that driveway. The rest of the variances that I applied for were denied, and I understand. So, I mean, the fence height is just for some privacy. Keep my dogs in. They can easily hop that 3-foot fence, even with the shrub that was there before. So, yeah, that's basically it.
Great. Well, thank you for being here today.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and open the public hearing then on item number 6, which is a variance appeal. We'll see if there's anyone else here to speak to this issue. Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and deny the appeal. It's very clear that this is not something that would be supported by staff or the Board of Adjustment. But I would ask staff to work with Mr. Ruiz to come up with something that could fit reasonably within our code, understanding what we understand the situation to be. Certainly an improvement is good, but I mean, I can see a conflict immediately next door, and I can see a precedent being set by allowing a fence of 9 feet in a front yard to be allowed. There isn't any legal basis to allow it. And I would ask Mr. Ruiz to work with staff to determine what his next steps are so he can become in compliance with the ordinance, because this is an as-built now situation. Further comments or questions on my motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is resolved. We will now move on to item number 7, which is a variance and site plan appeal by Mr. Oberpiller on behalf of North Bay Properties, and we will hear first from Mr. Crandall. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Goodman and committee members. The appeal before you today concerns a property at 2725 University Avenue Southeast in the Prospect Park neighborhood. The application went to the City Planning Commission on March 6th and included several variances and a site plan review application for a new 7-story, 135-unit mixed-use development on the property. The current zoning map shows that the property is currently zoned for the C3A district, and it is located on the University Avenue Goods and Services corridor. I'm going to go through a little bit of the policy context and then talk about the proposal itself. The site under the 2040 plan is guided for the Transit 30 Built Form Overlay District. This is one of the more intensive land use and built form districts that the city has. It's primarily due to its proximity to high frequency, high quality transit in that it's located between 2 existing LRT stations and close to the University of Minnesota East Bank campus. The primary function of that built form district is to encourage a level of development intensity that supports both local businesses and the existing transit service, as well as providing for important housing choices and options for employees and students of the University of Minnesota and surrounding neighborhoods. For context, as far as the city-wide built form guidance, the Transit 30 district is applied very selectively to areas of the city in and around downtown and specifically adjacent to the University of Minnesota campus. So it's not a very widely distributed built form overlay district. There are very few areas of the city outside of downtown that have this minimum development expectation. This is a context image showing the aerial of the site. The site is currently occupied by a 1-story commercial building, occupied by a restaurant use, and then a large surface parking lot. It's adjacent to an existing office building immediately to the west and a post office building to the east. It's a through site, so it is connecting both University Avenue and 4th Street Southeast and has frontage along both streets. There has been a significant amount of development in the area recently, primarily due to that adjacency to the university and to high-frequency transit. Much of that development is in the 6 to 8 to 10 sort of story development intensity. It's important to point out that most of those projects were either approved and or constructed prior to the adoption of the Minneapolis 2040 plan and prior to the implementation of this built form overlay that has minimum height requirements and development intensity requirements. The applicant is proposing a new 7-story mixed-use building with 135 dwelling units. This is an image of the site or of the proposal from the University Avenue. They are proposing commercial uses along that University Avenue Goods and Services corridor, as well as 1 level of underground and 1 level of at-grade enclosed parking. And then 6 stories of residential units above. These are just some context images showing that proposal in relationship to the surrounding built form. And then the applications that are required to entitle this project were a variance to reduce the minimum height requirement in the Transit 30 built form overlay, and that's the primary application at issue here. The minimum height in the Transit 30 is 10 stories. The applicant's proposal is 7 stories. There's also a variance to reduce the minimum interior side yard on both the east and west property line, and then a variance to reduce the minimum front yard along 4th Street Southeast, as well as the site plan review application. Due to the proposal's non-compliance with that minimum height requirement, staff recommended denial of all applications, and the City Planning Commission upheld that recommendation at its meeting on March 6th. I will point out, just for the record, that we've been meeting with this applicant regularly through the proposal development process. We don't like bringing applications forward with a denial recommendation. It's not common, but we did provide consistent and clear feedback that that minimum height requirement was something that we felt strongly about and would not be supportable from staff. I'll pause there and can take questions.
Okay, we'll see if there are questions from members of the committee. I have a few, but I'm certainly willing to defer to anyone else first. Mr. Crandall, can you note all of the different times that you told Mr. Oberpiller that you were not going to consider a building that was so far less dense than what the Transit 30 required? So that was at the committee of the whole?
Yes, so we conduct a pre-application meeting with every applicant prior to any applications being submitted or any meetings. And we did provide the feedback because that was the main question from the developer about the minimum height, that we would not support that variance. We did take a very basic version of this proposal to the City Planning Commission Committee of the Whole meeting for formal feedback from the City Planning Commission, and their feedback was consistent with staff that they would not likely support that variance recommendation.
And then they applied anyway, and the staff recommended denial, and then the planning commission officially met.
Correct.
Moved to deny it.
Correct.
Okay, so 4 times they were told no. And so I'm very interested in what's changed to get them in front of us today. I'm wondering if you or Mr. Nilsson could potentially answer the question regarding economic hardship. I understand, after doing this many years, that economics cannot be the sole factor in creating a practical difficulty to avoid the conditions of the city's new comprehensive plan. Could you speak a little to that? And/or Mr. Nilsson, could you also speak to that?
Sure, Chair Goodman. I think you stated it correctly. Economic considerations alone cannot be the driving factor, but economic considerations can be considered in addition to other factors. Keyword is alone.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Crandall? Is that you? Councilman Rossman.
Thank you. I have a question. I think maybe you covered a little bit. What is the main reason? Is it economic that the applicant has stated that he went from, 10 stories, 7 story? Is it the cost of the construction?
I can speculate about that and just summarize some of the conversation that we had with the Planning Commission and the applicant. The applicant has provided an appellant statement that outlines some economic considerations in relationship to the site. I think the primary driving factor has to do with construction type, in that wood frame construction has a maximum height of 7 stories in this case. So a switch to a different construction type would likely result in an increase in cost and a significant increase in development intensity to recoup that cost. The developer can speak probably more to that question. We're probably more concerned with the site itself and whether there's anything unique about the site that would prevent a development of greater intensity from being implemented here, and staff could find nothing about the site that would prevent someone from developing a more intense project in this location.
Okay. Other questions? So my last question, Mr. Crandall, we've told developers downtown no. We don't want someone building a 7-story building downtown in the center of downtown, correct?
Correct.
And generally speaking, the whole point of upzoning in the 2040 plan was to encourage density where there was transit, right?
That's right.
So what would it feel like to say, well, we didn't really mean that? Kind of think, if you can't do it, you can't do it. That's okay, just build what you can build. What's the 2040 plan philosophy on that?
Well, as I pointed out, there are very few areas in the city where we've guided for this level of development intensity, and so staff feels strongly that we capitalize on that investment in terms of time and guidance and energy of the 2040 plan to make sure that we're developing to our minimum expectations at the very least and taking advantage of these significant transit investments that we've made over the years. We haven't had this tool available to us for very long, and we feel it's a good tool for making sure that we're meeting our minimum policy objectives.
Okay, great, thank you. Other questions? Great, seeing none, thank you for your report. We will go ahead and open the public hearing on item 7. Mr. Oberpiller is welcome to speak for 10 minutes. I will invite him up to speak now. Ms. Lansing, is Mr. Oberpiller not here? He is. Great, come on up. He's an experienced developer. I would think he could represent his point of view on this. You're welcome to speak as well.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Carol Lansing. I'm the attorney for the developer and going to make our presentation today. It is probably the first time you've heard application for a variance of minimum height. It is a new ordinance, and there is some natural tension when there's new ordinances. what we're trying to do with this appeal is to better articulate where there are conditions of the property, physical conditions, that reflect, that have economic impacts, but are not economic considerations alone. And as Mr. Nilsson said, economic considerations are relevant, they just can't be the only factor. It's the physical conditions on this site that make construction of a taller building infeasible. And we've tried to illustrate that by showing you buildings and sites where taller buildings have been constructed. So this is our site, the North Bay site. You see it's a narrow through lot with limited street frontages, no corners. Here is the Pillars, that's down the street. It's 3/4 of a block. It's got lots of street frontages. Street frontages let you have units with windows facing the street. They're not going to face walls. That's important. This is been approved, not yet constructed, or is under construction on University Avenue, more than half the block, 3 street frontages. Rise, it's a whole block development. The residential portions are aligned on major street frontage. This is Wahoo, again, most of the block, half-block development that's been approved in Dinkytown, and a strange but whole block called the Field House that's going to be opening soon. Those are where building over 7 stories and doing the different construction type is feasible. All the economic factors are relevant to, can you market the units, what revenue you're going to get from the building. And you're not going to get it on a narrow lot like this where most of the windows are facing the side and other buildings potentially. So
Ms. Lansing, there's no buildings on either side of you. I can see there's surface parking lots. And what would the difference be of adding 3 stories? You'd think that would be better views in both directions.
Well, at this point in time, we don't know what development there will be.
But there's none now.
Nope, there's none now. But it is these physical conditions of the site. If this was a larger site, if it had more street frontages, it would be economically feasible to build a bigger building. There's also high water table and soil contamination, which limit the ability to do underground parking, which is important. There's only proposing 0.35 parking spaces per unit, but you do have to have some proportion of parking because people do have cars, and that's what they look at. Some of them, it's important to who they choose to rent with.
But the city's regulatory framework calls for no parking.
That's right, but that doesn't mean that it's market. And all development has to be marketable. It has to be financeable. The city knows that through the funding decisions they make. So we do believe there are physical conditions that are relevant to the practical difficulties here, and we also believe that it is consistent with the intent of the ordinance. It is high density. It's 135 or 150 dwelling units per acre. It's very high density by city standards. It will enliven the street front. It will be within walking distance of many amenities and the university. And they are proposing a solar roof because of greenhouse gas issues that are also important in transit-oriented development. So we understand your perspective, but we do think we had a valid issue to bring forward to you.
Mr. Oberpiller, did you want to add to that? You have 6 more minutes.
We really like to build a building for the end user. The end user is the one who gets impacted by the cost of a building. So the amount of density that's in this building is, like Ms. Lansing said, is very high. And the cost to keep the rent down of the building is good for wood frame construction.
We do have one other person we know wants to speak.
Yeah, there's one other one. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll open the public hearing. I know Mr. McConnell is here. I understand the property owner is here. Either one of you are welcome to speak now, should you choose to. We did receive your letter, Mr. Ng. I understand your family is the property owner, so you're interested in selling.
Good afternoon, council members. I know this is beyond, you're busy beyond, I know you're busy, and so I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you, and your time is appreciated. My name is Spencer Ng, and I am the youngest child of my parents Chun and Ng Ng parents of 4 boys. It is not in my parents' or family's nature or legacy to ask for anything that we have not worked hard for or complain or appear ungrateful for the opportunity to have built our American dream. Rather, it is quite the opposite. I understand before you confuse and anxiously humble as I ask for your support for the proposed project. Our family has owned the restaurant and property at this location for the past 30 years. My family and I are humbled that our destiny is in your hands at this time when our business has not been doing well. Like many food vendors, our restaurant never fully recovered from the pandemic. Experienced labor is short in supply. Dine-in and event bookings are still down. We are fortunate to keep afloat due to the ownership of the building, but as well, it is also a burden as well. I hope you were able to read the email that was sent over and submitted. As a gatekeeper of our city, I believe that it is important that you understand our family's history as it relates to this project.
Go ahead, sir.
My parents came to America as refugees and worked hard to get out of poverty. Without any formal education and with English as a second language, they took a chance and started a restaurant business at the location where many prior restaurant businesses have failed. My parents worked 7 days a week to make ends meet while also raising a family of 4 boys. Throughout the many challenges that rose, they worked hard so that they could fit in as refugees, so that we could attain the American dream. Our family has a 30-year experience history in this location in the Prospect Park neighborhood. It was by luck that our family found and could afford this location, as we knew very little about the area. We worked hard to fit in and serve a community that did not have minority-owned vendors or many residents or homeowners of color, apart from the Glendale housing projects. Our minority-owned business created employment opportunities, and we learned to engage in and give the community, as previous letters of support explained. While my family was successful, it was not as easy journey in a community that lacked minority representation. As it relates to the project in question, that is the 10-floor minimum requirement for the project. I believe a 10-floor minimum requirement is, on this block, has some room for change. Most of the recent construction in the surrounding areas are 6 to 7 floors. It includes the front and back of the properties recently built. In my opinion, requiring the project block to have a 10-floor minimum is not absolutely necessary, as you can easily build the same density population with a 7-floor building without the additional costs in this high, rich interest rate environment. In my opinion, it would not be out of character for you to approve this project, as the majority of the surrounding area dwellings are similar height that is being requested. In addition, there are current exceptions to increase the height maximum. There should be exceptions to decrease height minimum as well. The city of Minneapolis continues to make gains in supporting the creation of minority-owned business ventures and their success. My family is asking for your support. My family has an opportunity to bring our American dream to be heard, to a head to secure our family's legacy, a legacy that has been transferred down to privileged and mostly non-minority families for generations. Council members, you have the power to support a reasonable project so that our family can rest in peace, that my parents have closure as they retire. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And just for members of the committee, I gave them 10 minutes total, and I counted this gentleman in their 10 minutes, so thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'm going to move to deny the appeal. It's not a secret how I feel about this. I do not think that there is a practical difficulty. It's not a legitimate practical difficulty other than economic. And ultimately, despite the fact that I felt that there were challenges with the 2040 plan, the plan is in place. This is where we said we wanted density, and I feel like we need to live up to it. By not doing that, everyone else that comes through is also going to say that they cannot meet the density requirement. At a time at which we're talking about building more housing, going around our code without a practical difficulty to allow them to build less is completely contrary to the plan that passed the council, and for that reason, I can't support it. Are there further comments or questions? You are welcome to speak if anyone else has anything to say. Seeing none, on the chair's motion to deny, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is denied. And we have made it to 2:30 with one discussion item. A very important discussion item before the rent control staff presentation. And so I want to have an opportunity to introduce Mark Garner, who's been our very, very long time highly regarded staff person, along with Mike Newman, our project director, to talk about this $1 million forgivable loan for a very important project in, I believe, the 6th Ward. Mr. Garner, welcome. Great to see you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Garner, Senior Project Coordinator with CPED Business Development. This report implements the city's 2022 commitment in the budget to provide $1 million to the Indigenous Peoples Task Force, or IPTF, for the Mequonnedan Otasukan Art and Wellness Center project. This project is one of 3 Native American Community Center projects that receive funding as part of the city's Clyde Bellecourt Urban Indigenous Legacy Initiative. Approval of this report authorizes a $1 million forgivable loan to IPTF for the construction of the new facility to be located at 2313 13th Avenue South, approves the loan terms, and authorizes city officers to execute contracts. This report also confirms and updates actions that were adopted as part of the city's previously approved land sale and land write-down for the project. I will focus my report briefly on the new IPTF facility and the business terms for the $1 million forgivable loan. IPTF has proposed, the Indigenous Peoples Task Force is a nonprofit that has used cultural-based and experiential approaches to improve the health, educational outcomes, and economic success of Native Americans and other individuals in the community for more than 35 years. IPTF programs currently serve more than 5,500 individuals per year. IPTF has proposed to construct an approximately 12,000 square foot multi-service neighborhood center in the Ventura Village neighborhood near the American Indian Cultural Corridor. The primary goal of this project is to provide a permanent modern facility for IPTF to consolidate and expand its health, wellness, and education programs, while creating opportunities for youth and families with its expanding career and entrepreneurial training programs in the green economy, health, native arts, and foods. The Mequonnedan Otasukan project is an $11 million project with funding sources that include new market tax credit, equity loans, contributions from tribal communities, foundations, corporations, and individual donors. Public funding is being provided by the state of Minnesota, Hennepin County, and the city of Minneapolis. Business terms for the city's $1 million forgivable loan include the borrower will be the Indigenous Peoples Task Force or an affiliated entity. The term of the loan is 20 years. The loan origination fee has been waived. The interest rate is 0%, and there are no payments due during the term of the loan. At the end of the term of the loan, the entire principal balance will be forgiven if there have been no defaults and no changes in the property ownership or use without city consent. In addition to this $1 million forgivable loan, city roles to support this project include the previously approved land sale and land write-down, as well as managing a deed pass-through contamination cleanup grant. IPTF expects to close on all financing in August, with construction commencing shortly thereafter, and the new facility opening in 2024. At this time, I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Mike Newman, the project coordinator for the McWanaden-Otasukan project, who is here today representing the IPTF. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there questions for Mr. Garner? Comments or questions? Councilmember Osman.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm really excited the city is offering this loan, this forgivable loan to Indigenous People Task Force. This is located in Phillips neighborhood, which is dominantly a Native American community in that area. This investment will definitely be a great investment in the community, like a job training and long-term contribution to the health and well-being of the community. So I'm excited and I fully support this. Thank you so much.
Would you like to move approval?
Yes, I do like to move approval.
Approval has been moved of item number 25. Are there additional comments or questions? Seeing none, on Councilmember Osman's motion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's approved. Thank you so much, Mr. Garner, for being here today. We will now move on to our remaining item. Our remaining item is a staff presentation that's motion is to receive and file on the analysis of anticipated impacts of the rent stabilization policy recommendations. I will note that we are beginning the conversation at 2:37, and we will give this 90 minutes. Should we want to have further questions, I'm completely open to that, and I have a process kind of in place. Should we want to do that? Should we want to have further conversation at the next meeting? I'm also open to that, and I think we should just see how it goes. And if it feels like we need that, then let's discuss it at the end of the conversation. I will also note I'm going to use speaker management for the question and answer portion of the discussion, obviously not for our staff, and I'd ask each person to speak or ask a question for no more than 5 minutes, so if everyone on the committee can get their questions answered, and then you'll have a second opportunity to speak for 7 minutes, and the timer for speaker management will give you a sense of where you're at on time. Mr. Carl, did I get that correct? Okay, I guess we'll start it actually now at 2:38. Ms. Brennan, welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Andrea Brennan, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. I'm here to introduce this item to receive and file a report of anticipated impacts of a rent stabilization policy. The City Council adopted a resolution in April 2022 establishing a rent stabilization work group charged with recommending 1 or 2 frameworks for a rent stabilization policy. This action was taken in response to the Minneapolis voters' approval of Charter Amendment number 185, authorizing City Council to regulate rents on private residential property. The City Council resolution stipulated that the policy framework should be targeted to protecting Minneapolis residents experiencing the worst housing disparities based on race, ethnicity, income, and other factors. The resolution further stipulated that the policy framework should hold rental owners accountable to fair, equitable, and reasonable practices by prohibiting excessive annual rent increases. Our presentation will summarize the 2 frameworks recommended by the work group. It is important to note that the work group did not agree on a single framework. A simple majority of 56% of the work group membership recommended one framework, and a sizable minority of 44% of the work group membership recommended a second framework. Both frameworks are presented and analyzed in this report because the City Council resolution specifically allowed for 2 frameworks if the work group could not agree on a single framework. Our presentation will summarize staff's analysis of the anticipated fiscal and policy impacts of the 2 frameworks. This analysis was required by the City Council resolution. Specifically, the City Council resolution stipulated that the policy frameworks must not constrain the goals of the Minneapolis 2040 plan. The need for this analysis is also supported by a study on rent stabilization policies conducted by the University of Minnesota Center for Urban and Regional Affairs, also referred to as CURA. They presented their study to the City Council in 2020. When addressing the impact of rent control programs, the CURA study found that, quote, outcomes in individual cities are dependent on the unique features of not only the rent regulations themselves, but also the characteristics of the local housing market, unquote. In other words, the impacts of rent stabilization policies are dependent on the specific components of the policy and market conditions. The fiscal and policy analysis presented today was conducted by a staff team of approximately 30 subject matter experts from 5 city departments over a 3-month period. Our analysis looked at the specific features of Framework 5 and Framework 7 and analyzed them against the goals of Minneapolis 2040 and the context of our local housing market. Staff consulted with experts, both internal and external to the city, reviewed academic literature, available relevant data sources, and used skills and expertise to conduct this analysis. Our presentation will be delivered by staff from CPED, City Attorney's Office, Finance, and Regulatory Services. Each presenter will introduce the next. I will now turn it over to Joey Dobson, Housing and Equitable Development Policy Coordinator in CPED.
Thank you, Ms. Brennan. I do want to note that we've been joined by Council President Jenkins, Councilmember Kosky, and Councilmember Payne, who has graciously sat through the entire meeting. Now you want to be on the committee, right? Ms. Dobson, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Goodman, Council President, Council members. My name is Joey Dobson. I'm the Housing and Equitable Development Policy Coordinator in CPED. I'll begin by providing some background and context on the work that's led up to the report before you today. As Director Brennan mentioned, this report responds to the analysis objectives in the resolution. It provides high-level anticipated impacts of a rent stabilization policy for the city, with specific attention to the policy frameworks developed by the work group. Again, this report represents the coordinated work of several departments and numerous staff. So this team has been meeting weekly from the beginning of January to determine our content areas. We also coordinated on the final report. We consulted, as Director Brennan mentioned, with external partners, including experts at the City of St. Paul and the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. This was to get feedback on our analysis and to make sure we weren't missing anything. This project has been a top priority for each of the staff you see in the room today and several others who are not in the room. To ground this analysis, we needed to clearly identify the problem that a rent stabilization policy would be aiming to address. The relevant problem here is renter cost burden. This is the situation of renters paying too much of their income for rent, and as a result, being at risk for housing instability. Typically, this is defined as a household paying more than 30% of their income for rent. This chart shows the percentage in change in rents in the light blue and incomes in dark blue from 2006 to 2019. This is broken down by income bracket. You'll see that for the top quartile and medium income earners, incomes over this time period increased at a significantly more rapid pace than their rents. However, the opposite was true for the bottom quartile renter. For renters with the lowest incomes in Minneapolis, rents dramatically outpaced their incomes over this time period. This is a serious problem. Stable housing is a fundamental housing need, and housing insecurity has momentous impacts for families and households. City staff take this problem really seriously. While the city has prioritized significant efforts to support renters and promote affordable housing creation, more clearly needs to be done to make sure all Minneapolis residents can afford their homes. We understand the problem of renter cost burden as twofold. Part of the problem is an income problem. For too many people in Minneapolis, their incomes aren't enough to afford their homes and other aspects of life. The other part is a supply problem. There aren't enough housing units and not enough affordable homes for renters who have low incomes. The city began work to better understand rent stabilization policies following participation in a national anti-displacement policy network, work that some of you directly participated in. In 2020, as Director Brennan mentioned, the city engaged with the University of Minnesota's Center for Urban and Regional Affairs, CURA, to conduct a study. This report outlined the history of rent stabilization in other cities and the impacts of those policies, analyzing the Minneapolis rental market, the rental housing stock, rent trends, and habitability issues. Findings from this study were presented at a city council study session. And then to further local learning on this issue, last spring, the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, in conjunction with ULI, the Urban Land Institute of Minnesota, hosted a 4-part series of expert panel discussions. These were focused on rent regulation policies across the country and their impacts. City staff attended closed dialogue sessions with the panelists of these sessions to learn more about their research and perspectives. In an overview of the series, the hosts of these sessions identified these highlights. First, rent regulation policies vary in rules, coverage, and administration. Second, policies often benefit current renters, but can impair rental housing supply. And 3, conducting robust studies of rent regulations impacts is challenging. As of course you all know, in November of 2021, the voters of Minneapolis approved a charter amendment on the ballot. This gave city policymakers permission to consider a rent stabilization policy. This slide represents the question as it appeared on the ballot. And this slide shows then the amended relevant language that now exists in the city's charter. As the language indicates, any rent stabilization policy adopted through this legislative process would need to be submitted to voters for approval on a ballot. This slide is an overview of the sections in the report that we're presenting today, which was published in LIMS on Friday. After an executive summary and background information, the report provides an overview of the frameworks developed by the work group, data on what we know about renters, rents, and the rental housing stock in Minneapolis, legal considerations from the city attorney's office, anticipated impacts of a policy on city goals, anticipated fiscal implications for the city, including revenue and property tax implications, and the cost of enforcement. And finally, an opportunity cost analysis, comparing other existing strategies that address renter cost burden. The report then concludes with findings and recommendations. So as Director Brennan mentioned, last spring, the City Council established a 25-person stakeholder work group to develop recommendations for a potential policy. The work group included renters, property owners, developers, and then representatives from designated organizations who locally focus on housing work. I want to take this moment to publicly thank each of these members for the time and dedication that they put into this process. They took time away from work, from personal commitments, and really dug into the critical issues facing Minneapolis renters and to, at times, complicated policy components. The process they went through to arrive at these frameworks is documented in a separate, detailed report prepared by the facilitation team, which is also available on LIMS. So here are the components of the 2 frameworks that were fully developed by the work group. They're titled Framework 5 and Framework 7 because they were part of a larger list, larger number of options that were considered by the group. These are the ones that the members continued developing throughout until the end of the process. The first, Framework 5, here on the left, was supported by 14 of the 25 members, or 56% of the group. This framework recommends a rent increase cap to be fixed at 3% per year. It recommends vacancy control. This means that the cap would continue to apply between renters. It recommends no rent banking, which means rent banking is a mechanism by which a property owner could not, if they chose not to increase the rent by the full amount in 1 year, they could bank that amount or save it, make up the difference in a later year. For exemptions, this framework recommends that the policy would apply to all types of buildings and rental units. It does recommend allowing a property owner to be able to apply for a one-time exception to the policy in a given year to account for investments or substantial capital improvements to a unit. For enforcement, this framework recommends that the city certify rent increases and recommends the creation of a board that would assist with compliance and monitoring. It also recommends the inclusion of an appeals process. As supplemental policy recommendations, this framework recommends the city adopt a just cause eviction policy and extending the existing pre-eviction filing notice ordinance. Framework 7 on the right was supported by 11 of the 25 members, or 44% of the group. This framework recommends a variable rent increase that would be tied to the Consumer Price Index, plus an additional 5 to 7%. This framework recommends vacancy decontrol, meaning that when renter A moves out, the property owner could then increase the rent without regulation in between tenancies. It recommends rent banking. Again, this would allow the owner to bank or save increases to apply in a future year. This framework recommends exempting some types of housing, including subsidized affordable housing, new construction for 30 years on a rolling basis, and owner-occupied housing. For enforcement, this framework recommends self-certification along with an appeals process, some form of alternative dispute resolution, and an annual analysis of the program cost. Finally, as a supplemental policy, this framework recommends that the city provide a direct rental subsidy to residents for renters with incomes at or below 30% of the area median income, or AMI. At this time, I will hand it over to the city attorney's office.
Thank you, Ms. Dobson. And on behalf of the City Attorney's Office, I just wanted to highlight a couple legal aspects of rent control or rent stabilization programs, but I'll be very brief because generally this is more of a policy determination or a policy discussion than a legal one, at least at this point. And that's because, as you can see, for many decades now, the Supreme Court, through a series of cases, has recognized the underlying validity of rent control and rent stabilization programs, and more of the contemporary litigation, although recognizing that underlying validity of the programs, has focused on or resulted in requirements of providing some degree of robust procedural protections in the implementation of rent stabilization. And part of that is kind of reflected in a case that I think most people are aware of. The St. Paul Rent Stabilization Program is currently under review in federal court in St. Paul, and cross motions for summary judgment regarding that case were heard recently on January 30th at the beginning part of this year. And those motions are currently under advisement with a decision expected in the coming months. Thank you.
Turn it at this time to Director Port.
Good afternoon. I'm Alfred Port, Director of Housing Policy and Development at the City of Minneapolis Community Planning and Economic Development. For years now, you and your peers and other policymakers before you have guided policy toward growth, growing the city's rental housing stock, its population, and ensuring affordability and access to opportunity for Minneapolis residents. Under this guidance, the city has been highly effective in creating rental housing units at an unprecedented rate, whilst also prioritizing affordable housing or affordability. Any new policy that hinders this priority would be out of alignment with both the adopted city goals and the overall effective approach the city has employed in recent years. As part of this analysis, we explored anticipated impact to three critical areas: housing stability, housing quality, and housing supply. With regards to housing stability, we all are in agreement that more predictable rent increases assist current renters avoid involuntary displacement, and increase their sense of security. It also assists current renters who may be interested in home ownership to better plan and better budget for a successful transition to that space. However, a rent increase cap would incent more aggressive rent increases, especially without an option for rent banking. Vacancy decontrol, as recommended in Framework 7, would incent property owners not to renew leases to position them to increase their rents at a higher rate for the next renter. Under housing quality, a rent stabilization policy would disincentivize owners from making housing improvements to their properties, especially without the exception for capital improvements as recommended in Framework 5. Lastly, housing supply. The adoption of a rent stabilization policy would slow housing production, especially without an exemption for new construction and subsidized affordable housing, as was recommended in Framework 7. Later in this presentation, you will be provided with an overview of the academic studies that support these anticipated impacts. Allow me at this time to call on Director Coover, who will transition the discussion to the fiscal impact of rent stabilization.
All right, I'm Director Coover, Budget Director. I'm here to talk a little bit about the fiscal impact portion of our report. Next slide. So first I want to talk through our charge, the questions we're trying to answer in this work. First off, describing the impact of a rent stabilization policy on city budgets. In order to do that, we had to make some assumptions about the impact to the larger economic conditions in the city. So we'll sort of talk through how we made those assumptions and calculations. But the last part is really related to the work that we do for decision makers in the city every single year as a part of the budgeting process. We have limited resources, and so when there are policy decisions in front of you, our role in the finance department is to provide a description of the benefits, the costs, and the alternatives for these important decisions in front of policymakers. So our process, just to sort of reiterate what Joey mentioned earlier, we started by reading all the relevant academic studies on this topic. We've discussed our work with researchers as well as other municipalities that are facing these kinds of issues in their own cities. We've interviewed key participants in the housing market in the state of Minnesota as well as in the region particularly, and we've used all of those points of information to calculate a range of impacts. So one thing that this work isn't is an academic study. We're not economists, we are not academics. We're providing a fiscal impact analysis of what this could mean for the city. That means that we have taken all of these bits of information to try and put forward the best information possible, and we've produced not a precise number, but a range of impacts just to sort of indicate and to give policymakers some real concrete information to use in your thinking around this topic. Thank you. So we'll walk through our methodology a little bit more next, but just to start off with a high-level summary of our findings, we find that city revenues will be less than current projections for housing-related license fees, sales taxes, and franchise fees under these policies. We find that city spending will be more than current projections to administer the two proposed frameworks. We find that estimated market values will decline compared to current projections, and all three of those issues will have an impact on city budgets. So this image is meant to sort of show how we thought through this analysis. Most of the research and the discussions we've had with researchers in the field focus on the quality and quantity of rental and residential units. That's what you just heard Elfric discuss, as well as the market value and rents in places that have used these policies in the past. Those will impact certainly everyone living in the city and owning property in the city, but where the rubber really meets the road in our city budgets is on the revenues listed here: our sales tax revenue, franchise fees, rental licenses, development license, and permits and fees. Thank you. This slide is really to show the work that got us started. These are the academic papers that we reviewed to begin this work. This is all part of the record on LIMS and part of our report, if anyone wants to do more reading on that. Thank you. And for this slide, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Angie.
Good afternoon, council members, committee members. I'm Angie Skildum. I'm the director of the Development Finance Department. And as it pertains to the reference list that we just looked at, I'm going to spend a few minutes kind of talking through What we really learned from those studies, because while they do focus on different elements of rent stabilization policies, but there is agreement around the directionality of impact in a lot of different ways. And so the first issue overall is that these policies can lead to a lower quantity of rental units in the jurisdiction. This occurs over time, both because of loss of units due to disinvestment, loss of existing units, and we're going to quantify these impacts here shortly, and also because of impacts on the ability to construct new units given availability of capital. The second economic impact is that we anticipate a lower quality of rent control of units in the city as well. And again, this is because rent control policies can disincentivize owners of existing affordable housing, sometimes referred to as NOAH housing, naturally occurring affordable housing in the marketplace, from making large-scale investments in their property when they can't raise their rents to recoup those investments over time. The third economic impact that was a area of concern around these policies is they tend to create a mismatch between renters and rental units. This occurs for a couple of different reasons. One is that there is no means testing to a rent control policy, and so the benefits of these policies accrue to anybody who is a renter, regardless of income level, regardless of need for support. And because of that, people who have access to a rent control units tend to stay there over time and even over life changes. And so sometimes you get, for example, empty nesters in large family units because of their desire to hang on to a rent-controlled unit. The fourth area of economic impact is pressures on gentrification. Now, these impacts have kind of a mixed outcome, I'm sorry. In the short term, rent control policies certainly do benefit renters who are in existing rental units. This makes their housing expenses more predictable, and so it is helpful in that regard. But over time, these policies can lead to increases in gentrification pressure, particularly because the market tends to shift towards production of units at higher income levels, because those are the only projects that are really financially feasible. The fifth area of economic impact is the suppression of property values in properties that are classified as rental properties. This is true for both rent-controlled and non-rent-controlled properties, and we're going to look at some detail and put some numbers around the impact on that as well shortly. And then the final economic impact is just higher future rents. And this is because due to a constraint in supply, it's kind of the simple supply and demand dynamic. When the supply is constrained over time, rents tend to increase. So this next slide puts some numbers around the staff's estimate as to the impact on new construction specifically. And I think it's important to note that the differences between Framework 5 and Framework 7 are meaningful differences in terms of the impact that we anticipate. However, both of these frameworks will result in fewer new construction units in the city of Minneapolis. And the table shows that for Framework 5, this is a 10-year cumulative impact. We would anticipate somewhere between 25,000 and 30,500 fewer newly constructed units in the city than would occur in the absence of this policy. For Framework 7, the impact is less, but still meaningful, somewhere between 9,900 and 17,900 units. And I should note that you'll see a range in most of our estimates because it's difficult to exactly predict what will happen over time. But we are confident in the directionality of these impacts within these ranges. Same thing happens when you consider the impact on the existing rental housing stock. So the city is, of course, always losing housing over time due to it aging out and converting to other uses, et cetera. But again, we anticipate that both of these frameworks that we analyzed will accelerate the attrition or the loss of units in these areas. For Framework 5, somewhere between 7,900 and 12,500 units, and for Framework 7, somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 units, again, cumulatively over 10 years. This graphic is just a graphic representation of the tables and the numbers that we were just looking at. On the left is Framework 7, and on the right is Framework 5. The top line is the projection of growth in stock. That is our baseline. It is a 1% base growth assumption, which is consistent with our recent history in terms of growth of units. And then you can see the ranges of impact for Framework 7 and Framework 5. These tables also illustrate the fact that these policies, their impacts in the early years are not as significant, and it's over time that you start to really see the changes. And the next slide is just a different graphic representation of that same chart, looking at sort of the best case loss scenario for Framework 7 of about 9,000 units, 9,900 units, and 25,000 units on Framework 5. We think it's important to talk about the loss of housing stock and the loss of market rate housing stock, because our housing stock matters. The way that we get out of a housing crisis is to build more housing. And so the development of all types of housing plays a number of important roles in our city and its economy and our ability to achieve adopted policy goals. It provides places for people of all incomes to live. It helps to balance the rental market, which actually helps to stabilize rents. And that is, in fact, what we've experienced in the Twin Cities in recent history with the successful growth of housing that Director Port referenced earlier. It also adds to the market value of our city and allows new residents to share in the costs, share in supporting the public costs, and which reduces costs for existing residents. It also helps achieve important neighborhood goals like improving vacant sites and supporting neighborhood level retail, and as also previously noted, supports many of the city's goals that are outlined in Minneapolis 2040. It also offers the opportunity to develop better transit systems, which is of course important because transit is often, and transportation, second to housing for a lot of households in terms of their daily costs and needs. And I'm going to, for a moment, pass this back to Director Kruger to talk about impacts on city revenues.
Thank you, council members. So this chart shows you the specific kinds of revenues that we expect to be impacted by our analysis of rent stabilization policies. So the first line is around development, license, permits, and fees. These are all revenues that we collect related to new construction in the city. The next one down on the line is rental license fees. These are paid annually for each rental unit in the city. The third one is local sales tax. So we have a number of different local sales taxes that we collect at the city. For this analysis, we looked only at one of the 5, just at the sales tax collected across the city. We have a few others that are focused really on downtown. We decided to leave those out of this analysis and just look at what are the sales tax generated for folks that live in the city, and how might that be impacted by a slowing of the production of new residential units. The last one is franchise fees. These are fees paid by all residential units that live in the city and are paying utility bills. So this slide takes the work that Angie just described and the specific revenues impacted and sort of puts those together for a range of impacts for each framework. And I know this is a little bit small on the screen, so I'll just read the bottom line for each frameworks. When we're looking at all 4 of the revenue streams that we took a look at, for Framework 5, we're looking at a cumulative 10-year loss of $108.3 million to $139.6 million. For Framework 7, we see a smaller loss, again, over 10 years of $39.3 million to $74.8 million. We took a look at 10 years. I think for all of the slides you've seen around the economic impact, you've seen that 10-year window. We started out looking at 5 years, just because we have a 5-year financial direction that we publish and update each year as a part of our budget process. We received some feedback while we were doing this work from folks that are experienced researchers in this field, that 10 years is really a more reasonable time period to look at for these policies to take effect. So that's why you'll see everything in that cumulative 10-year mark. Yeah, I think that's it. Go ahead to the next one. And I will pass it back to Angie. Thank you.
It's a real enterprise-wide effort here. So I want to take a minute to discuss for the council and also for the public a little bit about what the relationship between estimated market values and the city's levy is, because this is a complicated but important piece of context for policies and like this. We'll start out by just saying that the largest single source of revenue to the city's general fund is the property tax levy. And you, as a council, set that levy at a specific dollar amount on an annual basis. So for 2023, it's $445 million. We should also note that that levy will increase over time on its own due to inflation and obligations related to city costs. But really, again, it's important to emphasize that the growth in the housing stock that the city has experienced recently has helped protect Minneapolis residents from feeling the full impact of that growth that happens strictly due to inflation. As it relates to this policy specifically, because that total levy amount is fixed, any changes will not impact the city budget. There's no loss of revenue to the city, but there will be a shift that will incur on who primarily incurs those costs. So in the short run, we anticipate that, again, the market valuation of rental properties will decline, and so other categories, commercial, industrial, or homeownership property, will bear the burden of that shift. And given the fact that commercial industrial levy in the city is also facing unique pressures coming out of the pandemic, we anticipate that the burden of the rental shift will be further pushed onto homeowners. So that's what we anticipate will happen kind of in the immediate to short run. Over the longer term, both renters and homeowners will feel the burden of this shift, because fewer residents in the city means fewer people to spread that cost to. So this next chart, again, puts some numbers around the concept that we just introduces and shows what we're anticipating in terms of the impact to the market values of rental property. And staff is anticipating a decline in value for rental properties of approximately 20%. This has been empirically observed in St. Paul and is actually a pretty conservative estimate of impact based on some of the academic literature. So again, because the levy is fixed, there will be no impact in terms of revenue that is collected, but the people upon whom these costs are shifted will experience that shift as a cost to them. So we wanted to estimate what that would look like, and what we're anticipating for Framework 7, again, cumulatively over 10 years, is somewhere between an $812 million and $1.02 billion shift. On Framework 7, somewhere between $410 million and $649 million. The final column shows you Again, kind of middle of the range, middle of the 10-year cumulative impact range, what that kind of average annual cost of that shift looks like. So about 95 million just on market value for Framework 5 and 55 million for Framework 7. My final slide is kind of a combination of what you just heard from Amelia and Director Kruger in terms of the anticipated loss of fee revenue and sales tax revenue, combined with this cost shift around the market values, and also inclusive of the information that Director Garnett-Hohuli will be describing next in terms of the administrative cost to the city. So this is kind of all-in impact. Same way the table works on this one. So again, the average annual cost all in on Framework 5 is estimated at around $106 million a year on average, and for Framework 7 is $60 million a year. So again, that represents either the shift costs or the amount of savings that would have to be found in the city budget if the council wanted to adopt a policy and keep it kind of net neutral to the taxpayers. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Director Garnett-Hohuli to talk about the administration of the program.
Thank you. Depending upon the framework, a comprehensive enforcement program will help ensure that property owners comply with rent increase limits so that renters can maintain stable, affordable, and equitable housing. To understand what a rent stabilization policy could look like in Minneapolis, city staff conducted informational meetings with internal and external stakeholders. We reviewed relevant literature, and we analyzed our data in competing areas, and we created models. Developed over the course of just a few months, the preliminary enforcement models are pointing to potential upstream and downstream effects, community and fiscal impacts, and resource needs. Additional analysis is needed for a more comprehensive evaluation of a proposed policy's outcomes, resources, needs, and a holistic enterprise cost. Currently, there are 107,000 licensed rental units in Minneapolis, and regulatory services processes licenses in our department. We conduct proactive and complaint inspections, we work with property owners to come into compliance with license standards, and support renters who are concerned about retaliatory action from the property owner. Enforcing a rent stabilization policy through Reg Services existing rental license program enables the city to leverage existing resources and strengthens capacity. The enforcement component of the rent cap is not related to safety and habitability of the unit, and therefore not an effective use of our inspection services division. A comprehensive data set on rent rates in the city does not exist. Implementing a rent stabilization policy would require the development of performance measures and assessments to support the most vulnerable renters and ensure that they have stable housing. I will say that this image was utilized because we have rental units in every part of this city. And I also want to convey that the highlighted or those darker areas are density, not more units. I mean, we're seeing more of our new construction apartments in the downtown area. So again, this hits every neighborhood in the city of Minneapolis. To understand potential impacts of rent stabilization policy in the city, the two proposed frameworks developed by the Rent Stabilization Work Group serve as the foundation of the analysis. The two rent stabilization policies frameworks center on these 5 high-level areas: what units are included, what happens when the unit turns over, and a couple of folks have talked about it already, how much can rent be increased, how do we confirm the rent increases, and who manages disputes. Next slide. Before we go into the enforcement specifics of the framework, it is important to understand the pool of units. In the context of the framework, non-exempt means that the units would be subject to the rent stabilization policy. The city licenses, as I stated, 107,000 units annually. All of these units are non-exempt under Framework 5 on the left, with around 27,000 units non-exempt under Framework 7 on the right. Historically, about 29,700 units have had rents raised over the proposed limits under Framework 5, while 2,200 have had rents raised over the proposed limit in Framework 7. With the pool of non-exempt units in mind, we'll move next into the specific frameworks and their respective models of enforcement. To develop these enforcement processes, we've leveraged knowledge of existing city programs like 4D, Renter's Assistance, and rental licensing. Discussions with St. Paul Rent Stabilization Program team about their enforcement processes and workloads have provided critical insights into how Minneapolis could effectively implement and achieve policy goals. So Framework 5, this is complicated. So I've been told this image is really helpful for folks to understand. So Framework 5, historically, 28% of all units have rent increases over higher than the 3%. So if we see that large, it's all in, 107,000 units. We have to take into consideration exemptions, capital improvements. So if a property owner decides to improve their property, let's say gut and renovate the kitchen and bathrooms, that will be pulled out. And I will note that this number is based on the permits that are pulled that we see annually. So this is actually what our housing market is doing. Again, historically, 69,300 units, historically, they're under the proposed limits. So these units, they're not touched. And then the last, we see historically over the proposed limit of 29,000. Again, I want to indicate that any one of these on that right, the rents could range from 1,000 to 6,000. This is all in, all our properties, regardless of rent. Framework 7, and this is more specific, and I will note that this is complaint-based on the right. So there's a lot of exemptions here. So initially, we have the 107, but if we look at units less than 30 years old, that pulls off or peels off 31,900. Then we have subsidized units that are exempt. That pulls off another 24,000. Then we have exempt homesteaded units. So if you're living in a property and you rent it, you're homesteaded, that's about 6,175. You're pulled out. So then we get to potentially non-exempt, and that leaves us with 44,925. Exempt estimated renter turnover, so we see about 17,858, and non-exempt, which would be about 27,000. And then historically, we know that 24,000 are under the proposed limit, but then we peeled off additional information, and historically, Framework 5 would get at the population that we believe is really struggling. Similar to one of the first slides we've seen with the income disparities between income and rent. You can go to the next slide. So what does it mean for a city to actually have a policy that makes sense and then having the staff and the wherewithal to actually enforce on it? So when we looked at this information, the implementation of the rent stabilization policy represents, and I want to be clear, this will be a new enforcement program and work that would require a new dedicated staff team. While best practices and existing infrastructure may be leveraged in standing up this new staff team, the work can't be added onto our existing work portfolio. So this would be a new program. In addition to the work analysis outlined for the new staff, there will be demands on the existing staff and capacity prior to and during the implementation of either rent stabilization framework. These staffing models were developed by conducting informal interviews with internal and external stakeholders, planning out a process for enforcement and workloads based on enforcement levels of the respective framework. In addition to the workload analysis outlined for the new team, there will be demands on existing staff capacity prior to and during the implementation of this framework. So this is significant depending upon which framework we go. We go from 7 to 12 new FTEs. And it hits majority of regulatory services, but also we did take into consideration 311, as we would hope that renters would call into that number, and we want to make sure that their calls are being answered. So this is the last slide, and this is important because I think this is really where the rubber hits the road, the implementation cost. While the number of renters impacted and level of resources needed to manage a rent stabilization enforcement program is driven by the framework, both would require significant investment to implement. Program operating costs of supplemental to staff cost include technology, mailing, translation services, printing, marketing, and advertising. While our conversations with St. Paul and other city teams helped inform the estimate, as I said before, additional analysis and collaboration with other departments is needed to develop a more comprehensive understanding of the operational costs. I also want to manage expectations that a 14-month ramp-up period is needed before rent stabilization policy could be enforced. This planning and development period would include hiring and onboarding new staff, sourcing and standing up technology, creating policies, procedures, and outreach materials, and educating our stakeholders. So in closing, on my part, Framework 5 would be $1.5 million a year, and Framework 7 would be about $1 million. I also want to note that as our housing stock ages and as more housing stock comes online, that increases our capacity. So we have to be mindful of the FTEs will scale if we're to enforce this appropriately. That's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Just a few final pieces for you, Chair Goodman and council members. As I mentioned earlier, in addition to analyzing the anticipated impacts of the frameworks, staff compared the impacts and costs to the city of known city strategies. The city has done a lot in recent years to support renters who can't afford their homes and to support the creation of new rental housing units. There are still too many families facing cost burden. We considered the effectiveness of existing city strategies to get at cost burden, looking at the impact on a household and the cost to the city to deliver that impact. I also want to acknowledge that state and federal action is a part of addressing this problem as well. We know that we're confident that in this legislative session we'll be delivering at least some rent assistance, but this work focuses on known city strategies. Staff identified programs like the Guaranteed Basic Income, or GBI, pilot program, and rent assistance through the city's Stable Homes, Stable Schools programs, which comes with wraparound services through a holistic and community-based model, as the most effective and direct tools at addressing that income component of the cost burden problem. Strategies that incentivize affordability, like the 40 Housing Incentive Program and the city's inclusionary zoning policies, are effective at addressing the supply component of renter cost burden. This slide is a summary of the findings that staff have presented today and are included in more detail in the report. Upon concluding this analysis, staff found that a rent stabilization policy would not target the relief to the renters whose incomes aren't enough to afford rent in the housing market. Staff found that the policy would impede the growth of city's housing stock, which, as staff have shared, does not align with adopted city goals and strategies. Staff acknowledged that certainly some existing renters would benefit from increased housing stability with a policy. However, there is a concern that a policy would have unintended consequences, leading to greater housing instability for renters long-term, and property owners may be incentivized to increase rents more dramatically than they otherwise might have, or pull units off the market. This slide gives an overview of the anticipated fiscal impacts, which I won't repeat, and the estimated costs of enforcing a policy. So at the conclusion of this work, staff came to these recommendations. Based on the findings we've discussed, staff recommend against the adoption of a rent stabilization policy. I'll highlight that the concern that right now is a particularly risky time to take any action really that would impede the development of new rental housing units. The city and market are still recovering from economic impacts of the pandemic, and it's critical that the city continue developing new units for our residents. The second recommendation here is just as important because we know too many families are struggling. Staff recommend the city continue supporting and really explore deepening investments in known effective strategies to boost incomes and incentivize the production of more housing. We know that unfortunately there are some property owners who engage in egregious behavior that leads to housing instability for their renters. Strategies to identify and hold those owners accountable should continue to be supported. Of course, now with the adoption of the charter amendment, the council may consider a rent stabilization policy ordinance through the legislative process. Again, any policy would then need to go on a ballot for approval from the voters. Thank you so much for taking the time for this lengthy presentation. At this time, the team is happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'll note that took about 50 minutes. We still have 40 minutes left for questions. I want to have an opportunity to just thank Ms. Kruver in particular, who came here today even though her service with the city is completed. You have been an amazing addition to the budget office, the finance team, a great leader in our city, and it's a really major loss for Minneapolis and yay, Kim Keller, I guess, in St. Louis Park. And let us be weary of the fact that this could continue to happen, but we do appreciate all of your incredible work. You've done a great job and been really wonderful to work with as part of the budget process and a part of this very important team. So thank you, members of the committee. We're going to take questions from the committee first, and we are going to rotate around with 5 minutes for each person. And since it's not a huge list, I'm going to just leave Councilmember Payne in line. You could take my spot if you'd like. Calling on Councilmember Chavez first, and the timer, I will note, is on the. I'm not taking up your time, Councilmember Chavez.
No worries.
It's on the speaker management system.
Thank you, Chair Goodman, and thank you for everyone for this presentation and all the work that went into it. My first question is in regards to it being that 56% of the work group voted for Framework 5, which in my opinion is a clear majority of the work group. Can someone walk me through the statement that there was no recommendation made from the work group when 56% is a majority? And given that the City Council did unanimously approve this work group.
Thank you, Chair Goodman and Councilmember Chavez. Thank you for that question. So the resolution that this body passed last April stated, a request for policy recommendations and the specific components of a framework. The resolution stated that if the group could not agree on a framework, the work group could present up to 2 policy frameworks to this body for consideration. As Director Brennan outlined in her introduction, there wasn't agreement amongst the body. There were 25 members. A majority, 56%, did support Framework 5 at the end throughout the process, and 11 members supported an alternative. The resolution did not define simple majority as the definition of agreement. So because there was not agreement amongst the group, that is why we conducted analysis of the 2 frameworks that made it and were fully developed throughout the process.
I appreciate that. I would say that question 1 passed with, over 50%. We established that. Question 2 failed. Question 3 passed and allowed us to explore this, right? So I would just say that a simple majority, I think to anybody, means that that work group decided that they chose what they want to move forward, but I appreciate the context. My other part, I want to read a little bit about the report. I read it thoroughly. It said, despite exhaustive efforts, staff were unable to identify an external party willing to engage with the city to conduct economic analysis of potential impacts of a rent stabilization policy. And from my understanding, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, no one from the city asked Cura on why they didn't apply or if they should apply. And I think that's important to know because I think as a city in 2020 and in 2021, we engaged with Cura to begin this process. So I think it would have made sense for us to communicate with Cura, talk with Cura, or at least do some community engagement. So I guess my first question in regards to this is, can you walk me through the process of finding an external party?
Yes, Chair Goodman and to Councilmember Chavez, thank you for that question. I'm happy to provide some detail about the process that staff underwent. So as we've noted, the resolution called for this analysis, and so beginning last summer, so the resolution was adopted in April and then modified simultaneously to when we were considering applications to put together the work group membership itself. We worked through the city's procurement policies. Initially, we submitted an RFP through the Target Market Program, which the city has developed to provide opportunities for local and small businesses to do work with the city when a need is identified for an external partner. No bids were received through that process, and so immediately after it closed, we opened up that bid or that bidding process to the public, so anyone could apply. Staff did complete dedicated outreach to local and national entities that we thought might be interested in the opportunity. And throughout that process, which we followed the procurement process, we did not receive any bids through that process either. And so once that timeline had completed, we went an additional step, and staff did some dedicated recruitment to some known, again, local and national partners that we had heard about who might have the resources and the interest in doing this work. We engaged in lengthy conversations with a handful of these partners, and at the end of the day, we just weren't able to reach to secure an agreement for those services with a third party. Is there anything that anyone wants to add?
Thank you. Was Kira one of the members, one of the researchers that we reached out to?
I don't know that I can confirm the complete list of entities that we reached out to, but I'll say, and again, through the chair to Councilmember Chavez, I'm pretty confident that the opportunity was pretty well distributed locally.
Okay. I'm not sure if that's what they think, but thank you for that. I think one of the things that brought these concerns to me is that I don't think the city council was walked through this process, and council owners weren't engaged that this was happening and that there was no one accepting these contracts to do this work. So I think that would have been a good opportunity for us to do our own outreach. But I'll just move on to more about the analysis component. Can you walk me through how we decided which studies to incorporate into the study?
Through the chair and to Councilmember Chavez, I believe you're referring to the list of studies that is identified on a slide in this presentation. Yeah. Since I didn't put that slide together, I'm wondering if someone else, I would say we, in the background I gave earlier, the panel that the Federal Reserve of Minneapolis, in conjunction with ULI, that was a really helpful knowledge sharing process. It was, again, there were 4 panels over the course of a few months. And through that process, we identified a lot of the key players, both kind of practitioners at local jurisdictions nationwide and academics who had done work studying rent stabilization. And I would say that process was really helpful, as well as the academic studies that are cited in the report that Kira did for the city before. But is there anything else to add?
Thank you so much. Council members, the other thing I would add is, after we started getting this list together and talking about the important research that we were using, we did talk to other researchers and experts in the field to say, what are our blind spots? Are there other things that we're missing in that? And so that was a step in our process before we got here too. Great job.
You perhaps have time for one more question.
Okay, thank you, Chair Goodman. I have one last question in regards to that. So can you walk me through how we got to the conclusion that rent stabilization would impact development in this analysis? I was reading through the Kira report, and it said that there's little empirical evidence to show that rent stabilization policies negatively impact new construction. It also says that there's little evidence that rent regulations cause a reduction in housing quality. So I want to get to why the Kira report is different from our rent stabilization analysis.
Chair Goodman and to Councilmember Chavez, thank you for that question. I'll note one piece and pass it to Director Skildum. That is absolutely what is stated in the Cura report. Since the publication of that Cura report, we had the kind of really helpful benefit of our city across the river adopting a policy, and so the process that they went through provided a lot of guidance. And I'll also just note that until the adoption of St. Paul's policy, there are no policies nationwide that have not exempted new construction in some way, shape, or form. So I think that might be a piece of what was feeding that assertion in the CURE report. But I'll pass it to Director Skildum.
Hi, thanks, Chair Goodman and Councilmember Chavez. Yes, exactly to that. The only thing that I would add is that a portion of the reason why there's, the CURE report states that there's little evidence of impacts to new construction, is that there's the impacts are very specific to local markets and local market conditions. And so there's also, one could say, very little evidence that there's not either. There's just not a lot of academic research around that specific point because it's so specific to the individual market where the policy is being applied. And so that is the reason that in addition to the academic research, we took the step that CURE took as well in their work to talk to people who are participants in the local market so we could better understand what their reactions would be to particular policies specifically in our jurisdiction.
Thank you. That concludes Councilmember Chavez's 7 minutes. We'll move on to Councilmember Osman for 7 minutes. And ask Clerk to restart the clock, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, staff. I know you are busy with your regular departments, and this sounds like you were pulled in to look in this work. And I would say, do you think you had enough time to review? Was the time enough for you to review and study, and would that be sufficient enough for you to come up with this conclusion?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Osman, at the beginning of, when the resolution was adopted by the City Council, staff weighed in and we said that we thought that more time to do this kind of detailed economic impact analysis would be extremely helpful. As a way of comparison, for example, the inclusionary zoning policy that was adopted by the City Council was the result of 3 years of analysis, of intensive stakeholder engagement, a lot of economic analysis, et cetera. And we would have recommended more time be dedicated. We would have recommended more, bringing in a third-party economist to do some additional analysis. But we were constrained by the timeline of the council in achieving a question for the ballot in 2023. So that was our understanding of the constraints that we had at the longest first quarter of the year to do this analysis. And in fairness, too, the idea is that we would have had a consultant on board to help us, in the sort of, while the work group was working. And so there would be more of a sort of in tandem approach. And ideally, we would have liked the work group members to have had the benefit of some of this analysis as well while they were doing their deliberations. But because we couldn't get that consultant on board, we waited, we had to wait until the work group completed their work before we could look at the specific frameworks that came out of that work and did the analysis that we did. That said, given the short time frame that we had, we really did, we dropped a lot of work that was happening. And we, again, about 30 staff from 5 different departments that were all busy doing other things and have all of those things still waiting for them. We brought as much capacity as we could to doing this analysis, and I think we feel very good about the level of analysis that was done. We feel very confident in the work and the analysis that was done.
And then the analysis, did you look at 10 years in the future? Is that what your analysis consists? Am I correct? Okay. My last question will be that I think, we know what happened last year. I mean, last 10 years. We know the effect it had on our residents, and we have the numbers. We can see, how much rent went up in city of Minneapolis, and how some residents, especially rental residents, are in a crisis. And would you think that have you looked into, let's say, what the impact will be 10 years from now for not having a rent stabilization or rent control or any policy?
Sure, Madam Chair, Councilmember Osman, that is the framework that we tried to use, was a 10-year sort of lens looking out, because so many of the effects that we described today and in this report really are effects that take a while. So, and if you want to stand up and jump in on this too, but in the findings that are in the report, that is looking with a longer term, that 10-year lens. That's why in our recommendations we say that yes, in the short term, a rent stabilization policy could be beneficial to a subset of Minneapolis renters in the short term. And we also say that longer term, looking out, that may not be the case for new renters, for example, coming into the market. And so I will, since Angie's up, I will hand it over to her to reply more. But the other thing I will say about the analysis that was done is that since I brought up the inclusionary zoning ordinance, for example, that analysis was done assuming no rent stabilization policy. So that is something that we didn't do in our analysis, but it's something we probably would need to do in an analysis, is review whether or not an inclusionary zoning ordinance is even feasible anymore with a rent stabilization policy. So that's another piece that we didn't look at in this analysis, but we would definitely need to if there were a policy moving forward. Angie?
Thanks, Director Brennan, Chair Goodman, Councilmember Osman. The only thing that I was going to add to what Andrea was saying is that actually across the board, on average, rents, looking back historically, have been pretty stable in the Twin Cities and have been averaging somewhere around between 2% and 3% increases per year on average. So that is, of course, not every individual renter's experience at all, but across the board, the market has actually quite stabilized locally, and that's largely due to the, successful policies that have been focused on increasing growth and increasing the development of housing in the Twin Cities overall. Again, just kind of the simple supply and demand.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am next in the queue, but that's because Councilmember Rainville couldn't figure out the system. So go ahead, Councilmember Rainville.
Chair Goodman, I hate to disagree with you, but I can figure it out. My system is not working. It's not on the user. If you're going to throw anyone under the bus, let's look at the clerks.
You're losing time.
Okay, thank you. So if staff could help me, please. So what I'm hearing you say is that you really did not have access to a third-party economic analysis. You were unable to get an expert. And could you venture to explain why no one stepped forth to accept that challenge, if that's possible?
Chair Goodman and Councilmember Rainville, thanks for that question. I think I can summarize the nature of reasons that we heard from the groups that we had conversations with, and really I would describe them as threefold. First reason being the timeline, which we've already discussed, a really tight timeline, especially for some of the bigger national firms. The timeline just wasn't in alignment with their process and how they work for getting approval and that kind of thing. The second is some substantive concerns around availability of data and availability or confidence in ability to project, to make projections based on a local market. And then the third piece was that there is some hesitance to engage in this topic. There's a lot of there's a lot of opinions around this topic, right? And and we heard some sensitivity to engaging in a project like this out of a concern that a work product might be used to advance or negate a political position that the firm might not feel comfortable with. So I would say those are kind of the nature of some of the concerns that we heard.
Great, thank you. Next question is, could someone speak to the effects in St. Paul? So what we've read in the paper, heard from people in the development business is that the financing for projects in St. Paul has dried up, that their production has dropped, while at the same time, same year, our production has increased. If someone could, I'm sure you analyze that.
Chair Goodman, Councilmember Rainville, thank you for that question. Conversations with colleagues, our staff colleagues in St. Paul, and also with some of the elected officials in St. Paul were definitely a part of this analysis. I think there's a few things that we do know, and then I think that there's a few things that, just we have to see how they play out over time. One thing that we do know is that the council has already amended their policy from what was originally passed through their, I'm going to say referendum process, but I don't know if it's referendum is the right word, but we'll call it that. Due to impacts that they're seeing to development occurring in their community. So the council had enough concern to make some significant changes right off the bat.
If I could just interrupt you there. Please. So compared to the policies that were put, the majority policy by the group, what type of amendments did the St. Paul City Council make to those policies?
Chair Goodman, Councilmember Rainville, it's not an exact analogy, but I would say that Framework 5 looks more like what was originally passed in St. Paul, but not identical, and Framework 7 looks a little bit more like what is the current law of the land in St. Paul right now. So they did introduce some exemptions and some different appeals process. I don't have like the list in front of me, but we can sure provide that to you of exactly what the changes were in those policies across time. But largely it was due to what I would call anecdotal evidence, but is certainly their daily experience in terms of the difficulties and problems this created around specific developments that were already in the pipeline in St. Paul. So there have been a few projects that have in fact closed and moved forward since the changes to the policy in St. Paul, but they are doing so, we talked to the developers of those projects, they are doing so largely with non-traditional sources of financing that wouldn't really be viable to use at scale. And then, of course, we've seen some real significant impacts to probably their most high-profile development site, which is the redevelopment of the Ford site in St. Paul, where the market rate ownership housing is progressing and the 100% affordable subsidized housing is progressing, but the market rate rental development has ceased, which has also had some impact on the depth of affordability in those completely 100% subsidized buildings due to the loss of the tax increment that they were counting on to provide more subsidy there. So those are some examples of some of the impacts that we've seen in St. Paul.
So in the view of staff, a longer period of time, we could get a better answer, as well as closely watching the effects in St. Paul of their program? Is that?
Chair Goodman, Councilmember Rainville, I think that certainly it provides empirical evidence to us about the investment opportunities in our market relative to other markets around the country. So yes, we would get more information on that specifically over time. I think that staff would say that the overall directionality of the impact, though, that we've presented in our report is what we would expect to see. So over time, I don't think that it is likely to change the directionality of any of the movement that we've seen, but it might help us to narrow those bands of ranges that we're presenting.
Okay. And Chair, may I ask one more, please?
You can, but there are 14 minutes left and 4 people in line.
Okay. So just overall, if you could just clarify that your, the rent stabilization strategies in other cities, there is no clear path to success?
Councilmember, or Chair Goodman, Councilmember Rainbow, could you state the question one more time for me?
So when you reviewed other cities, did you see cities that were successful with their rent stabilization programs?
I don't think, Councilmember, that we analyzed all 200 cities with policies to judge their success, and there's a wide range of how they're implemented, but I see that Amelia has something that she wants to add here, so I'm happy to tap out to her.
Thank you, Chair Goodman and council members. I would just restate that we weren't necessarily evaluating success for all rent stabilization. We were asked really narrowly to look at what are our city goals around more people living in the city, more rental units, more affordable housing, and how does this stack up against those specific goals? And that is what we find a negative impact.
Got it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Rainville. I will note that Councilmembers Chugtai and Ellison elected to defer to Councilmembers Payne and Jenkins. So we're going to go ahead that way, and I will assume that means that they will ask for another half hour or hour at the next meeting, and we are going to discuss that. But Councilmember Payne, you have waited a long time. So thank you, Councilmember Chugtai. We're going to turn to you for 7 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair Goodman. Thanks for your hospitality. So I'm going to preface this with just outlining some of my expectations, and I think you've done a really good job of kind of providing the context around like whether or not my expectations were feasible in terms of how much time you had and whether or not you had the expertise necessary through RFP and partnership. But my expectation was to see some sort of statistical model that was looking at various parameters, whether it is rent control as like a dummy variable in the statistical model, but you know, what's the vacancy rate, what's the interest rate, what's the unemployment rate, like what are all these different factors that could have a cause and effect relationship on what our stated goals are, and whether or not our stated goal as the dependent variable has a high statistical correlation with all of these other factors across the market. Because I've experienced and been frustrated by the conversation being so overemphasized around these really basic, supply and demand 101, econ 101 type of discussions that are very narrative based, but they're not very empirically based. And my expectation was to move beyond the narrative and start getting into the empirical. And I don't think that we, again, had the time and resources to get to my expectation of an empirical answer to this question. And so that's a long setup for my actual question, which is, you have your projections of the decrease in existing rental housing for both frameworks, and that ranges somewhere between 0.9% to 2% annually. And as I said, my expectation would have been, some sort of regression analysis, statistical model that could give us some confidence around what the actual cause and effect relationship is that leads to those numbers. But I didn't see necessarily in the written report how we got to those numbers. If we could just like put some specifics around that, that would be really helpful for me.
Through the chair and to Councilmember Payne, that's a Director Skildum question, I think. Or Director Kruver.
Thank you, council members. So your preamble is very helpful for us to try and sort of understand the difference between expectations and what we did produce. Because as you said, and as I sort of gave a brief overview, we approached this more like a fiscal note than like an academic study. So I think there is a mismatch there. But what I'll say is to get to those specific ranges of decreases, we largely looked at the academic studies that resulted in a specific percentage decline. So thinking like the one top of my mind is the research done around San Francisco and the, I think, 25% decrease in rental units over the time period that they looked at. we looked at sort of the variety of studies that had that kind of percentage drop, applied it to our own numbers here in the city, our own projections around rental units, in addition to just sort of picking, we know we're not San Francisco. So in addition to using those data, that's where the sort of qualitative work that my counterparts in development finance, their work interviewing people that work in the Minnesota housing market to try and understand how that could relate to our city. Again, to put out ranges to try and get close. We don't have an exact number because we don't have a model, but we tried to say, here's what we've seen in other studies, here's what actual economists have determined in other cities, here's what our qualitative analysis is telling us, and what are some ranges we can give to try and, again, give some concrete information to decision makers.
And then a follow-up question, again, kind of with that preamble still applying. We're trying to look at the cause and effect relationship of rent stabilization policy, but we don't have any analysis of a cause-effect relationship to, say, interest rates and what downward pressure that is putting on new unit production. We don't have a cause-effect analysis on costs, right? So I did my own kind of like lit review and stakeholder interviews, and one of the big issues that a lot of the property owners have is that they say their costs are skyrocketing. Well, the Fed Reserve is increasing our interest rates to try to change that outcome. So that increase in interest rates is putting downward pressure on unit production, but it's also putting downward pressure on cost. So I'm trying, like, I feel like there's a lot of missing information that we have, because for every one of these points that you say is negative, there is a potential policy solution to that point, right? So if the negative impact is increasing rent year over year so that landlords are at least maximizing that rental increase that they're permitted to, I know that some folks on the dais are interested in rent banking. That's a complete counter policy to that effect.
That's right.
And so I feel like we could use quite a bit more information to look at, not just like, here goes some of our goals and here goes either the positive or negative relationship to the outcome of those goals, but here goes like the cause-effect relationship to this policy component.
Yep.
And here goes an alternative policy that would actually neutralize or mitigate that negative effect. And I think that we just don't have that information, right?
That's right, Chair Goodman and council members. We, because of the limited time and the time spent trying to get a third party, we really tried to focus narrowly on our charge, right? City goals, just as you laid out, how does this get us closer or further away from our city goals? What you're talking about, sort of a more nuanced, here are the factors that aren't so good, and here's some ways to mitigate them, or here's some other options outside of the two frameworks that we looked at. I think that could be a very valid next step, but it is just not what we had the ability to produce on this timeline.
And then I'll just kind of wrap up my question of, basically your entire narrative or analysis follows this kind of base assumption of this decrease of 0.9 to 2.2% annually. So from there you say, okay, here goes the number of units impacted, here goes the cost per unit or cost to enforce, based on these assumptions, essentially. Everything follows based on the confidence we have in those numbers, right?
And Chair Goodman, council members, that is correct. And I think, again, that is why we try to put forward a range, just to say, you know, from the research we looked at, from the conversations we had to understand the local market, we feel very confident in the sort of direction compared to our goals. The ranges are trying to sort of put our arms around the magnitude, but we don't feel confident to put a single number out there. So, yeah, I think that's our,
One thing I'd like to add, Chair Goodman and Councilmember Payne, is that we did crunch a lot of numbers in this report as well, to the best available data that we had. And we did try to really show our work on how we got to the numbers that we're presenting in this. And they're detailed in the appendix, kind of step by step. And if you do have any questions about that analysis, we'd certainly be happy to kind of meet with you and walk you through
Yeah, I'd love that
those
one-on-one.
numbers going forward.
Okay, so the last person with 7 minutes is Council President Jenkins, and then I'm going to make a suggestion of how we proceed going forward, which I think gets a little bit at what Councilmember Payne was saying also. So just give us 7 more minutes, Councilmember Payne, and we will maybe come up with the next step.
Thank you, Chair Goodman and committee members for allowing me to participate in your committee meeting. I know my 7 minutes is taken away 7 minutes from a committee member, so I really appreciate the opportunity. I did want to just note for some of our audience members who may not be in this chambers very often, there is a correctional facility upstairs, and I think it's recreational time, and we hear a lot of bouncing during that time. So just wanted to clarify that. I probably won't take the entire 7 minutes. I really want to thank our staff for the tremendous hard work that you guys put into this analysis, particularly given the time constraints that have been very much identified throughout the time. I just want us to really think about what we are trying to accomplish here. What I took away from the Cura report is that there are some very specific people who are being injured and challenged by our current rent system. And they have identified those community members in specific zip codes, specific income levels, and even specific ethnicities and identities. And so whatever policy that we come up with, and I want to see something happen for these very challenged members of our community, has to be targeted, it has to be direct, and it cannot exacerbate the problem that our community members are suffering from currently. I think there is income inequity that we all know exists in our country. I think there is a supply issue that has been identified, and we have been working hard as a council and as a city to address that shortage. And so I don't want to see a policy that is going to in any way inhibit that continued production, because I do think we're seeing some benefits from that. And so I just want us to keep our goals, our thoughts around the specific communities that are being impacted today. And based on the Cura report, they stated that those are people living in 55411, 55412, and 55406 primarily. And those are the communities that I think we need to help. I think we need to be thinking about issues like universal basic income, guaranteed basic income, rent subsidies, however you want to frame it, to really help people with the significant inequities in income that exist in our society and in our community here locally. And that has to be a part of whatever solution that we come up with as a council. And so once again, thank you, Chair Goodman and committee members, for allowing me to speak today. And I'll look forward to the next conversation in a couple of weeks, I think.
So that was the perfect last word, and I appreciate it, and often that happens. I want to thank our staff. I am going to make the following suggestion. The next biz meeting is on May 2nd. I'd like to allocate 1 hour to answering questions as a follow-up from today. I will note that we will lose Amelia, obviously, she'll be at her new job, and there are a few others that have, long planned medical appointments or vacations, and so we might not have the entire staff team. As a result of that, I'm also inviting council members to submit questions in writing. And I'm going to turn it over to the clerk because I don't want to run afoul of this legislative directive thing. So perhaps he could just tell us what the best way. Councilmember Payne had asked for an individual meeting. I thought that was terrific. And it sounds like the staff team is willing to do that also. And so I'll leave that to individual council members to meet with staff at their request. But Mr. Carl, perhaps you could suggest a process by which people could submit written questions and the staff then could answer those first at the 1 hour meeting. I'll also note that I had to postpone the conversation about Kmart at Lake Street, community participation, in order to accommodate this. And that's going to be on the next agenda also as well. All of the other bond issuance, public hearings, and quasi-judicials that we will have. So I'm happy to do it. I appreciate, again, Council Members Chugtai and Ellison deferring to others, and we will start with them in the next meeting and then also invite anyone on the council to submit questions in advance according to Mr. Carl's directive, which I will ask him about now.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Ms. Dobson, could you put slide 8 back up on the screen so people can refer to it? I think that, Madam Chair, as you and I briefly had a chance to talk, in order to be fully transparent and fair to not only all members of the BIZ committee, but also the City Council on this major policy proposal, and having talked to the staff involved, it would be helpful to invite all council members to submit their questions in response to today's presentation in writing by emailing me. I'll be the central contact point for that. We'd want to have all of those questions submitted to the clerk by noon on Thursday. So that gives council members a chance to think through their questions, consult with peers, put those questions together by noon on Thursday, April 20th, using this slide and the way it's laid out, the report and presentation. We would then categorize those questions into these various issues, so things around background or process questions, policy component questions, fiscal impact analysis, legal questions, things like that. It's very possible that multiple council members will have similar or same questions, and so we would try and combine those where they make sense, circulate that whole list of questions, both to council members and to the staff, so that they have as much time as possible to respond to what I anticipate could be a lengthy list of questions. We would transmit that to them. Then that Thursday afternoon, giving them all the way up until noon on May 1st, the day before the next BIZ committee, to work diligently to respond to as many of those as they can. Obviously, they would submit their report back to us in writing, and we would circulate that full report to all members that afternoon, the day before BIZ, post it in LIM so that there's public access and transparency to all of those questions, all of those answers, and make sure that's available before the meeting. With your direction, Madam Chair, we would also go ahead and set aside an hour at the May 2nd BIZ committee meeting so that there was time to address the questions and any further clarifying questions at that meeting that staff can address. Obviously, if questions can't be addressed, that is a very short turnaround time of less than 2 full weeks. We could then carry those forward to the next cycle BIZ as necessary, and then keep that in the LIMS file so that the one that's on the agenda today, which is 2023-00382, keep that in the public realm so that all of those questions, the answers about this major policy proposal are available both to all of our policymakers, to the staff, and to the public. So highlighting questions to the clerk emailed by noon on Thursday this week, categorizing those as shown in this slide, getting a full list circulated both to all council members and to the staff, and then giving them as much time as possible to respond in advance of the hour set aside on May 2.
Okay, so that sounds like a process for the written questions. Does not preclude asking questions out loud in committee, starting with council members Ellison and Chugtai. And of course, any other members of the committee, and then anyone else on the council who would like to do so for an hour on the 2nd. Is there any objection to that path? Okay, then thank you very much. Then I think what we'll do is we will just continue this item until the next cycle. It won't appear on the council agenda, of course, and we will continue to move forward. I want to thank everyone in the audience who sat so patiently through many, many items today. We appreciate your presence in the chamber today. Seeing no business before us and without objection, I will declare the meeting adjourned.